Hey everyone, welcome to yet another episode of GenAI Vlog. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to build a lambda function to invoke bedrock runtime immediately, effectively. And this pretty much gives you any models that's available in the model catalog on Amazon Bedrock. So with that being said, let's turn our attention to AWS. So you go to AWS Bedrock, that will be Amazon Bedrock, and then right off the box, you can click on Model Catalog, where there's a yellow button here, and then you can pretty much look at any of the model that is available on the platform. Now, of course, you're not gonna have accessibility to every single model. Like for example, here, Cloud 3.7 Sonnet, I need to require the access. But for the ones that you are grant access, it's going to say access granted, right? So for example, Claude 3.5, then I can invoke that. 3.5 Sonnet, I can invoke that. With that being said, in this episode, what I'm going to talk about is what is the quick way of invoking the model that you've been granted access that's within the model catalog that has partnership with Amazon. So that will be models like Anthropic, right? So if you don't know what model you have access to, click on Model Access under Bedrock Configurations. This will give you a list of models that you have access to. And with that being said, let's turn our attention to Lambda. So here I am in the Lambda function module. I'm going to create a new function. For simplicity, I'm going to call it invoke bedrock model lambda. And for the runtime, I'm going to pick the latest Python version, just like that. And I want to make sure I'm creating a new role. So create function, and that's going to take me to the Lambda console. So there you go. Now this Lambda function is created. Now first things first is we need to get this script inside of this Lambda function .py, right? So I'm going to paste everything in here. Of course, I will drop the GitHub repo of the script in the bottom of this video. Let's go in here, expand a little bit. Let's start from top. Let's see what's going on, right? Create a session runtime. Of course, these are standard procedure. And then the model ID here, I'm going to pick this particular one. Now, the reason I pick this one is because I want to use Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and that is the V2 version, right? So where do I get this model ID? I go to my Bedrock, and then I check out model catalog, and I said that I want the model that already granted accessibility, right? So click on Anthropic, Claude 3.5, that's right there. And if I click on that, it's going to take me to the model card. And in the model card, if you scroll down, that is the model ID, right? So if you want, you can get that and just paste it here. And there you go. That's the model ID. Now let's take a look at the Lambda function. So we can have a couple of a try except statement. If you don't have any body, obviously that is not going to work, right? So that give you some sort of error code, missing request body. If you do have the body, extract the body and move on, right? So when you extract the body, here are a couple of input arguments that you're going to get, right? Prompt, image. This is a multimodal model. What that means is it actually accepts image data if you do want to do image captioning. Max token temperature, those are standard large language model parameters. Once you have these arguments, you extract those, then you are all set. You can get the message together. That's going to be your image data. And then you can pretty much just make an invocation, right? So you invoke the model by sending these arguments into that client, right? The Bedrock runtime client that we define above. That's where we invoke the model. And whatever response coming back, we're going to load that back in the JSON object, and then we're going to dump it in the JSON body, and we're going to return it as a return object. And if it's not that, then let it fail gracefully, right? 500 error code, things like that, depending on the situation. So once this is here, let's Control S, make sure save it, and then let's deploy it. And then once it's deployed successfully, you are all set. So now the code is inside of this Lambda function. So before this go live, there are a couple of things I need to do. I need to go to configuration. I need to go to the general configuration and increase the timeout, right? Obviously, it's going to take more than 3 seconds. So I'm going to say 2 minutes, just like that. And then I'm going to hit save. Another thing to do is the permission. I'm going to go to permission. And then I'm going to click on this execution role. This is going to take me to the IAM role that's associated with that particular Lambda function. And in this case, it's a basic execution role that's not going to cut it because we are invoking a model on Bedrock, right? So we need Bedrock access. So click on add permission, attach policy, and then you can then type in Bedrock and you just pick the full access because I want to access pretty much everything in Bedrock. Depending on company's policy, sometimes you probably want to have a stricter permission policy. That's going to be how you add it in here. You can edit whatever you want if you feel like the full access is too much authorization. So with that being said, those are all the policies required for this Lambda function. And we are pretty much almost done, right? The last thing I need to do is to add a trigger. So in this case, I'm going to add an API gateway. I'm going to add a new API. And then to make my life easier, I'm going to choose REST API and then let it be open. So anybody can hit it. And then I'm going to say add. This is going to create an API gateway for me that's associated with this Lambda function that is going to invoke it. So I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to click on this link to take me to that API on API gateway. Now, of course, I want to test it out, right? So if you scroll down, go to test, I want to select the post method. And then here, I'm just going to do something very simple, right? I'm going to say bracket. And inside of this bracket, I'm going to say prompt. So I'm going to send in a sentence, explain quantum computer to me like I am a 5-year-old, right? Whatever, like something easy. So this is the prompt, and this is the post method. So we're going to run a test to see if it works. If it doesn't work, we're going to have to debug it. So it says I cannot invoke it. Let's make sure everything's correct. I want to make sure that this name is correct, and then that this is, and the region name is actually where I am. So currently I'm on US East 1. Obviously, that's a mistake. So let me change that to US East 1. Let's deploy the code, and let's come back to API Gateway, and then let's try that again. Okay, boom, this time it worked. This is the message body that we talked about, and this is the model response, and then this is the answer. Great. So now that this API worked and we can successfully invoke this model, then let's go ahead and deploy. So we're going to say deploy API. We're going to pick a stage name. Let's say dev, deploy, and then we are all set. So now let me click down here, select post method, and boom, that is my invoke URL. So now I know my invoke URL. I'm going to paste it here as a record. Now I'm in a Colab environment, right? So this is a Jupyter notebook, and I'm going to try to invoke this URL programmatically using Python. So first things first is I need a helper function and set the requests to post API, right? So I'm going to paste the code here. We're going to import requests, and we're going to do a post request. So let's run that, and that saves in the backend. And then what's going to happen is I am going to use the URL that we have up here as an input argument in this function, along with payload and headers. So I'm going to save a URL here. Now what's going to happen next is I need the rest of the argument. So payload, headers, things like that. This URL, I'm going to capitalize it, and then I am going to put it here as a first input argument, just like that. And I'm going to hit this API. So the prompt says, explain quantum computing in simple terms. Great. Then that's going to be what this answer should be. So quantum computing can be explained through a few key concepts, blah, blah, blah. Great. Now we have some sort of a base understanding that this API could work. Now, if you go back to the model catalog, this is a text and vision model, right? It's a multi-modality. So we're going to obviously show you what vision looks like as well. So I upload this document. As you can see, I can click in there. This is an insurance document. It's obviously a scan or some sort of a picture, right? And these are handwritten digits. Of course, you can run OCR, optical character recognition. But in this case, we are testing out multimodality model, right? So we want to see if we just send this into a model directly without running OCR, what kind of output are we going to get? So what's going to happen is I'm going to have to convert this image into base64 format. As a way to do that is to use the following helper function. So this helper function is going to convert image by using a file path and convert that into a base64 format. So let me run that. Now that lives in the backend. And let me test out the function by invoking it. So this is the name. I'm going to copy the name and put it here in the input argument. So let's run that. It's successfully converted into base64. And then the type of that object is going to be a string. Great. So let me grab the previous code for simplicity. And then I'm going to paste it down here. And then, of course, I need to add pictures in here, right? So I need to give myself some more space. And then here, I'm going to say image. And then I'm going to throw the image base64 in there as an input argument. Close bracket. And then I am all set. So instead of explaining quantum computing, I'm going to say explain what is in the image to the best of your ability, right? So hopefully this is going to take this image as an input argument, and it's going to talk a little bit about what's inside of the image. So let's take a look at the output. This appears to be an insurance policy application form from the Combined Insurance Company of Ireland. It's labeled as a little giant, E16 accident policy with policy number 9257958. You get the idea, right? So let's take a look at the picture. So what is the policy come from? It'd be really interesting to see if this number gets correctly, right? So let's see if this number gets correct. Here's the accident policy number, 9257958. 9257958. So I think this number, it got it, right? It got it correctly. And then in the end, to wrap things up, you can have a helper function to plot the image caption onto the image, right? Add caption to image. So it's going to take an image path, get the response data, and then just overlay on top of it. So let me show you what that looks like. Let me get the path again. Let me put it here. And then let's just overlay it. So this is what it looks like, right? So this is the original image. And then this is the caption, right? This appears to be an insurance policy application form from the Combined Insurance Company of Ireland, right? This is attached to this image in the bottom. So there you go. Hopefully you get the idea, right? Hopefully this video sheds some lights of what it means when you invoke an end-to-end solution of a lambda function that is calling bedrock model Sonnet 3.5 v2, which is a multimodal model that accepts both images and text as input. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like.